My name is Claire Manning. I'm 52 years old, a former high school English teacher, and I've spent the last 6 years of my life becoming someone I never thought I could be. Some might call me a monster. Others might call me justice incarnate. I prefer to think of myself as a woman who simply refused to let the system's failure define the end of my story. Before Sana died, I was ordinary. I graded papers, attended parent-teacher conferences, and believed that good things happen to good people. I believed in justice, in fairness, in the idea that when someone takes a life, they pay for it. I was naive, I was foolish, I was happy. The morning mist clings to weathered headstones like ghosts refusing to leave as I stand before a small granite marker, fresh flowers in my weathered hands. The inscription reads, Sana Elizabeth Manning, 1995-2018, beloved daughter. I trace her name with my finger, the stone cold beneath my touch, and remember the day everything changed. It was a Tuesday when Marcus Rothwell decided to drink his lunch at the country club before driving home in his BMW. Sana was walking home from her job at the bookstore, her arms full of novels she'd bought with her employee discount. She never saw him come in. The impact threw her 30 feet. She died instantly, they said, as if that was supposed to be a comfort. One moment of poor judgment. That's what they called it when Marcus Rothwell got behind the wheel with a blood alcohol level twice the legal limit. One moment of poor judgment that ended my daughter's life as she walked home with books she'd never get to read. I screamed in that courtroom when Judge Raymond Cooper sentenced him to 2 years probation and 200 hours of community service. The bailiff had to restrain me as I lunged toward the defense table. 2 years probation, I shrieked. My daughter is dead, but money talks louder than a mother's grief, and Marcus Rothwell walked free that day. That night, I made a decision. If the system wouldn't give me justice, I would create my own. I would become the consequence they thought they could avoid. I would be patient, methodical, and thorough. I would study them the way I once studied Shakespearean tragedies, looking for the fatal flaws that would bring about their downfall. I started with research. Defense attorney James Davidson, Judge Raymond Cooper, and the 3 witnesses who lied under oath to protect Marcus Rothwell. I learned their routines, their weaknesses, their deepest fears. I discovered that Davidson was having an affair with his paralegal while his wife battled cancer. Judge Cooper had a gambling problem that had left him vulnerable to the Rothwell family's influence. The witnesses had been paid handsomely for their false testimony. My first target was Davidson. I spent months learning about his wife, Catherine, a gentle woman who taught piano lessons from their home. She deserved better than a husband who betrayed her while she fought for her life. I anonymously sent her photographs of James and his paralegal at various hotels around the city. I included bank records showing large deposits from the Rothwell family trust into James's personal account. Catherine filed for divorce the following week. In her court papers, she cited not only the adultery, but also the suspicious payments that suggested her husband was selling justice to the highest bidder. The local bar association opened an investigation. Within 6 months, James Davidson was disbarred, divorced, and working as a night security guard at a shopping mall. But I wasn't finished with him. I learned that his elderly mother lived in an assisted living facility that he could no longer afford. I made sure the facility's billing department knew about his changed circumstances. When they moved her to a state-run facility with a reputation for neglect, I sent James a sympathy card with a picture of Sana inside. Judge Cooper was more challenging. Judges are protected by their position, insulated from the consequences of their decisions by tradition and law. But every man has his price, and Cooper's was his reputation. I spent months documenting his gambling debts, his connection to the Rothwell family, and his pattern of lenient sentences for wealthy defendants. I created a false identity as a freelance journalist and began interviewing families of victims who had been failed by Cooper's court. I compiled their stories, their outrage, their heartbreak. Then I leaked everything to the local newspaper, along with financial records showing suspicious patterns in Cooper's gambling wins that coincided with favorable rulings. The story ran on the front page: Judge for sale. Investigation reveals pattern of corruption in Cooper's court. Cooper tried to weather the storm, but when the State Judicial Review Board opened a formal investigation, he knew his career was over. He resigned in disgrace, his pension stripped, his reputation destroyed. I attended his resignation hearing, sitting in the back row where he couldn't see me. When he walked past me in the hallway afterward, I whispered, "Sanaa Manning says hello." He stopped, turned, and looked at me with recognition and terror in his eyes. The three witnesses who lied under oath were easier targets. They were ordinary people who had been seduced by money and now lived with the guilt of their perjury. I simply had to apply the right pressure at the right time. Maria Santos, a waitress who claimed she saw Marcus Rothwell drinking only coffee at the restaurant, had used her payoff money to put a down payment on a house. I discovered she had lied on her mortgage application about her income. A single anonymous tip to the bank's fraud department cost her the house and her job. David Kim, a parking valet who testified that Marcus seemed sober when he left the country club, had dreams of opening his own restaurant. I made sure the health department knew about several violations at the restaurant where he worked as a cook. When they fired him, I ensured that word spread through the industry about his unreliability. His restaurant dreams died with his reputation. The third witness, Jennifer Walsh, was a socialite who had been having an affair with Marcus Rothwell and lied to protect him. I sent her husband evidence of the affair, along with records of the payments she'd received. Her divorce was messy and public, her social standing destroyed. She moved to another state, but I made sure her new neighbors knew about her past. Each victory felt hollow. Sanaa was still dead. Marcus Rothwell was still free, but I had learned something important. The corrupt system that had failed my daughter was built on a foundation of lies and self-interest. Remove the right supports, and the entire structure collapses. Marcus himself was the final piece of the puzzle, the golden boy with the wealthy family and the bright future. He had returned to his life of privilege, working at his father's company, living in a penthouse apartment, driving expensive cars. He had learned nothing from Sanaa's death, felt no remorse, changed nothing about his behavior. I spent 2 years studying him, learning his patterns, his weaknesses, his fears. I discovered that he had developed a serious cocaine habit and was stealing from his father's company to fund it. I also learned that he had been driving under the influence multiple times since Sanaa's death, each time escaping consequences through family connections. I began a careful campaign to destroy him. I leaked information about his drug use to competitors of his father's company, causing them to lose several major contracts. I sent evidence of his embezzlement to the FBI, who opened a federal investigation. I made sure his father learned about his son's continued drinking and driving through anonymous packages containing photographs and police reports. The pressure mounted slowly but inexorably. Marcus began to crack under the weight of his guilt and fear. He started making mistakes, becoming careless, desperate. He increased his drug use, became erratic at work, began having public outbursts about being followed and watched. His father, Richard Rothwell, finally saw his son for what he really was, a liability. He cut Marcus off financially, fired him from the company, and disowned him publicly. Without his family's protection and money, Marcus was just another drug-addicted criminal. The FBI arrested him on federal embezzlement charges. With his expensive lawyers no longer available, he was assigned a public defender who barely knew his name. The judge who sentenced him was new, young, and unburdened by the Rothwell family's influence. Marcus received 8 years in federal prison, but I still wasn't finished. I had learned that several guards at the prison where Marcus was incarcerated had lost family members to drunk drivers. I made sure they knew exactly who Marcus was and what he had done. Prison justice has its own rules, and drunk drivers who kill innocent people are not popular among the inmate population. Marcus lasted 6 months before he was found dead in his cell. The official cause of death was suicide, but the guards made sure everyone knew the truth. He had finally faced the consequences of his actions. I stood at Sanaa's grave the day after Marcus died, placing fresh flowers on her headstone. 6 years of planning, of patience, of methodical destruction had finally reached its conclusion. Justice had been served, even if it hadn't come from the system that was supposed to provide it. The corrupt lawyer was disgraced and broken. The bought judge was stripped of his position and pension. The lying witnesses had lost their homes, their jobs, their reputations. The killer was dead. Everyone who had helped Marcus Rothwell escape justice had paid the price for their corruption. But as I stood there in the cemetery, I realized something that surprised me. The hollow feeling in my chest hadn't gone away. Sana was still dead. The justice I had created couldn't bring her back, couldn't undo the pain, couldn't fill the void where my daughter's laughter used to be. I had become something I never intended to be, an architect of destruction, a dealer in consequences, a woman who had learned to hurt people with the same methodical precision I had once used to teach Shakespeare. The system had failed me, so I had become my own system. But systems built on revenge and retribution are just as corrupt as the ones they replace. The morning after Marcus's death, I returned to my empty house and sat in Sana's room, surrounded by her books and her dreams. I picked up one of her journals and read her words. "I want to make the world better, Mom. I want to help people who can't help themselves. I want to be someone who brings light into dark places." Sana would have been horrified by what I had become. She would have wanted me to channel my grief into something positive, something that honored her memory without destroying others. She would have wanted me to teach again, to help young people, to be the person she thought I was. I spent the next month writing letters to each of the people I had destroyed. Not apologies, I wasn't sorry for what I had done to them, but explanations. I told them about Sana, about the system that had failed her, about the choice I had made to become the consequence they thought they could avoid. I told them that justice isn't just about punishment, it's about accountability, about facing the truth of what we've done and choosing to be better. I told them that they had all had choices, and they had all chosen money and convenience over truth and justice. Some of them wrote back. Maria Santos sent me a letter saying she had found work at a nonprofit organization helping victims of drunk driving. David Kim had started volunteering at a soup kitchen. Jennifer Walsh had begun working with a legal aid society, helping people who couldn't afford expensive attorneys. Judge Cooper never responded, but I read in the newspaper that he had started teaching civics at a community college, trying to educate young people about the importance of integrity and public service. James Davidson had become a paralegal at a firm that specialized in helping families of crime victims navigate the legal system. I realized that my campaign of destruction had done more than just punish the guilty, it had also freed them from the corruption that had trapped them. Without their money, their positions, their reputations to protect, they were finally able to choose to be better people. I decided to follow their example. I applied for a position teaching English at a community college, working with adult students who were trying to rebuild their lives. I started a scholarship fund in Sana's name for young people who wanted to study literature but couldn't afford college. I began volunteering at a victims' rights organization, helping other families navigate the legal system. The work was hard and the pay was modest, but I found something I had lost in those 6 years of planning revenge: purpose. I was helping people again, bringing light into dark places, being the person Sana had believed I could be. One day, while I was grading papers at the community college, a student approached me after class. She was young, maybe 20, with bright eyes and an eager smile that reminded me of Sana. "Professor Manning," she said, "I wanted to thank you. Before I took your class, I was thinking about dropping out. I didn't think I was smart enough for college, but the way you teach, the way you make us think about the stories we read, you've changed my life." I smiled at her, remembering Sanaa's dream of making the world better. "What's your name?" I asked. "Sanaa," she said. "Sanaa Martinez." I felt something shift inside me, a sense of completion I hadn't expected. Sanaa, my Sanaa, was still dead, and nothing would ever change that, but her spirit, her desire to help others, her belief in the power of education and compassion, lived on in the work I was doing. That night, I returned to the cemetery for what I knew would be the last time. I placed fresh flowers on Sanaa's grave and spoke to her as if she were standing beside me. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry for what I became, for the choices I made, for the people I hurt. You deserved better from me. You deserved a mother who honored your memory with love, not revenge. The wind rustled through the trees, and I imagined it was Sanaa's voice, forgiving me, encouraging me to keep moving forward. I had spent 6 years learning how to destroy lives. Now I would spend the rest of my life learning how to build them up. I walked away from the cemetery and didn't look back. The woman who had entered that courtroom 6 years ago was gone, consumed by grief and rage. The woman who had methodically destroyed the lives of those who had failed her daughter was gone too, her work complete. I was someone new now, someone who had learned that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about transformation, about choosing to be better than the circumstances that try to define us. It's about finding light in the darkness and sharing it with others who need it. My name is Claire Manning. I'm 52 years old, a community college English teacher, and I've spent the last 6 years of my life becoming someone I never thought I could be. Some might call me a monster, others might call me justice incarnate. I prefer to think of myself as a woman who learned that the best way to honor the dead is to help the living. Sanaa would have been proud of the woman I've become, and that, finally, is enough.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, do well to click like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more heart-wrenching stories. And don't forget to click on the notification bell so you can be notified when I post subsequent videos. See you on my next video.